Welcome to the College Football Bros. I'm Michael Newman.
I'm Ryan Newman.
And I'm Trey Newman.
All right, we covered some SEC dark horses in our episode yesterday, so be sure to check that out. Today we're covering the second favorites in the SEC East and West. Ryan, what's the question for today?
Question is, Florida or Texas A&M? Who is more likely to win their division?
All right, let's get started with Florida. Trey, what do you think about the offense?
Well, I mean, you can't talk about the offense without talking about last year. It was one of the best offenses in the nation, but unfortunately, they have a lot of major production, including Kyle Trask, to replace. And Trask, I mean, he had a Joe Burrow-like season, and so you have to think the offense will regress, but it's still going to be a productive offense. They're going to rely on Emory Jones, who finally gets his turn to lead the offense. He certainly needs to polish up his passing skills, but his legs are an element that the Gator offense didn't have a year ago, and his scrambling is going to be important because the offensive line does have some question marks. I'm confident that Dan Mullen will maximize his skills since he usually does, and with the offense in general. And then when you look at the supporting cast, you're not going to be able to simply just replace a guy like Kyle Pitts, but there's some guys that can then hopefully step up. You got a guy like Jacob Copeland. He's a speedster with some experience. He'll probably be the main weapon. Xavier Henderson will get more targets. And last year, overall, they didn't prioritize the run game whatsoever, mainly because they had so many advantages in the passing game. So we'll see if the running game steps up this year.
Yeah, and the running game needs to step up this year. It will. They've got, good amount of experience coming back up front. A fully healthy Ethan White should help. But Emory Jones is the key there. Obviously, he is an unbelievable threat on the ground. So, and a good group of running backs. They also add DeMarcus Bowman from Clemson. So he was a huge recruit. We'll see if he can break out for Florida this year. But there's just so much lost. This passing game is just a huge question mark right now. We don't know if Emory Jones is a good passer. He might be, but we kind of don't know that right now. And not just losing Pitts, Kadarius Toney, Trayvon Grimes, the receiving core is a major question mark. Emory Jones's arm, I like you, I'm confident in Dan Mullen, so I'm kind of just penciling them in as a really good offense, but it's not a sure thing.
No, I'm with you.
If Emory Jones isn't the passer that we expect or want him to be, they could go to Anthony Richardson. I wouldn't be surprised later in the season if that happens. I also wouldn't be surprised if Emory Jones is a long shot Heisman contender. So I'm kind of all over the place.
Yeah, we're kind of trusting Dan Mullen at this point with that offense. So
yeah.
But let's move over to the defensive side that needs to improve a lot from what they did last year under defensive coordinator Todd Grantham. Not good. 96th in pass efficiency defense, 92nd in yards per play. But I think this defense is going to bounce back in a pretty big way. I really like what they have up front. They brought in a couple highly talented transfers, Daquan Newkirk from Auburn and Antonio Shelton from Penn State. They're good players that are going to be along that front for them. But maybe the best of the bunch on that D-line could be Gervin Dexter. He's a huge guy, 6'6", 310, D-tackle, former 5-star who should be going into his second year. I think he could be maybe one of their breakout players this year. Now on the edges, you got Zachary Carter, who had 5 sacks last year. You also have Brendan Cox, the former Georgia transfer. So you got some decent pass rushers. They should get a little bit better this year. I like their linebackers pretty good, Diabate and Miller. And then Kyer Elam is one good corner, but outside of him, that's where we start to get a little shaky territory. So, they brought in a 5-star true freshman, Jason Marshall. He's apparently looked pretty darn good, so maybe he can kind of step up and take ownership of that other corner spot. But the secondary needs some help. They need a little more production from that front seven to get after the quarterback to kind of bail them out a little bit. But, you got Elam, and hopefully somebody else, a player or two, steps up. But it's going to be a much better defense than it was last year.
Yeah, and you talk about that secondary. They also have a junior, Jaden Hill, who apparently looked really good in the offseason as well, and they definitely need him to step up. But overall, Todd Grantham's defense, it really held the Gators back last year. Gave up almost 31 points a game, which was the most in over 50 years for Florida. But like you, Ryan, I think it can only improve, and mainly because of the production that's coming back. They have a lot of their leading tacklers come back. I really love the transfers that they got in the line. So I think we will see a pretty significant improvement on the defensive side.
All right. How about Florida's schedule?
Alrighty then, the schedule here. So in the non-conference, they host Florida Atlantic, Stanford, and Florida State. And then they travel to South Florida. So those are their 4 very relatively easy non-conference. When Florida State's down, of course. So it's an easy non-conference there for Florida, and they should, quote unquote, go 4-0. But within the conference, they get LSU, of course. And it's at LSU this year, which is tough place to play. And Bama comes to Gainesville, so that's another tough draw for them from the West. And of course they have Georgia every year in Jacksonville. But in the conference, it's not an easy slate.
Yeah, that's as far as winning the division, which is of course our question for this episode. When Georgia plays Auburn and Arkansas from the West, and Florida's playing Bama and LSU, that's a pretty big difference there. Yeah. But let's move on to A&M, our other option here. And they're, of course, in the SEC West. Kellen Mond is gone, and he was good, but it's not like he put up monster numbers. So if the next guy up steps up, then you might not see a drop-off there. So the quarterback battle is down to Haynes King, a second-year player, very highly recruited, and Zach Calzada, who has been there. This will be his 3rd year. So King seems to be the favorite, but that's still up in the air. King's a bit more mobile. But either way, I love the skill talent around the quarterback. If you didn't check out our top 10 offensive weapons in the SEC, few of these guys came up. You've got Jalen Weidermeyer at tight end, one of the best in the country. They also add back, the running back core is, I think, the best in the country. I think they have the best group of running backs, led by Isaiah Spiller. And they add back Caleb Chapman at receiver, who got injured last year, was just kind of had a big game. I think it was against Florida that went over Florida and got hurt. And he may be, because what this A&M offense needs is to stretch the field. Like, they need to go deep. That's explosiveness has been an issue for Fisher since he's been at A&M. Maybe Chapman is the key to that. He's got the speed, he's got the size. So, offensive line is. It could be good. You got Kenyon Green at left tackle, who is All-American type.
Yep.
Maybe he's shifting out from guard, but all the other 4 starters are gone. So there's a lot of talent there to replace him, but something to watch out for.
Yeah, didn't even mention some other guys like Devin Achane, was the Orange Bowl MVP. I know you talk about the running back room being great, but Chase Lane
is insane.
Yeah, exactly. Chase Lane is only going to get better in his 2nd year playing as a receiver there. So weapons are great. And the O-line, I know Kenyon Green is the only guy coming back, but they got another Matthews coming up the chain there at center. I think he's going to be just fine there. Jameer Johnson is transferred from Tennessee. Should maybe be all right there at tackle. Okay, and then the other guard that I really like, Oki Ogunbiyi. I think that's how you say it. Aki Ogunbiyi. He was a great recruit. He's going into his 2nd year here. The kid, he's got a lot of potential. So I think there may be a little growing pains here early with this offensive line, but I think kind of as the season goes on, I think they'll be actually playing pretty well because Jimbo Fisher's actually pretty high on him. I know it might be just coach speak, but he's pretty high. So, and he's generally pretty forthcoming in his comments. So I think this offense is going to be pretty darn good.
Yeah, we've talked about Anais Smith a bunch in previous episodes, but we didn't even bring him up, a kind of receiver / also helps out in the running game. And another name, we're bringing up a lot of names here, but Baylor Cupp, if he's healthy, he, of course, has got injured the last couple of years before the season, disappointingly, because he was a 5-star tight end recruit. If you could pair him with Weidermeyer, that would be amazing.
It would. Now, when you talk about A&M's defense, that Wrecking Crew defense, the D coordinator, Mike Elko, he has another strong defense this year. They were number 1 in the SEC last year, giving up only 317 yards, 22 points per game. And one of their strengths was forcing tackles for loss. I think it'll continue this year, especially with the deep group of ends. You got DeMarvin Leal. He was a force with 8 pressures, 3 deflected passes, forced a fumble. You got Michael Clemens. He had 4 sacks in 5 games, and then he got injured. So with him back, you got the secondary completely intact. Miles and Jalen Jones both had stellar years back there. Really, I mean, the biggest question mark to me is that linebacker, because they do have to replace the leading tackler from a season ago, Buddy Johnson. But I think Aaron Hansford is really going to blossom even more this year. He converted from tight end. He was productive in his first year as a linebacker last year. Lots to like on this A&M defense.
Yeah, defense, I don't have too many question marks. It's going to be really good. It's going to be one of the best in the country, and I have faith in Mike Elko and some of the super seniors that decide to come back, so not a lot of concerns there. But what about the schedule? How does that set up for him, Trey?
So first of all, the non-conference is very soft. The toughest game they've got is Colorado, so it really shouldn't bang them up too much. They drew Missouri.
State?
Yeah, fair enough. They drew Missouri.
Legit argument, really.
Yeah. They do draw Missouri and South Carolina from the East, which is great because considering they avoid Florida and Georgia, of course. But they still have to slay that Alabama Dragon in the West. But the good thing for them is they get them in College Station, and looking at their schedule, they could or should be 5-0 going into that game. So it could be a great atmosphere in Kyle Field.
All right, let's answer the question, Florida versus Texas A&M. Who is more likely to win their division? I think A&M is the better team than Florida. Like, I just think they have fewer question marks on the roster. But I think Florida is more likely to win their division, to answer this question. So they both obviously have juggernauts to deal with, Georgia and Alabama. But A&M also has to deal with LSU, who I'm somewhat low on this year, but I acknowledge they have a high variance. So they certainly have division-winning upside. They have Auburn, who has a lot of talent. Ole Miss, very high on this year. They've got huge upside if the defense can take a step forward. I don't see Florida having to deal with as many teams, because after Georgia, as far as division-winning upside, I mean, Kentucky and Missouri should both be pretty good, but I think there's a little bit more of a ceiling on those teams. So, yeah, Florida's my choice.
Yeah, it's a really tough call because I agree as saying Texas A&M I think is the better team, but Florida has the easier road to do it. But in the end, I'm going Texas A&M. I am just going to take the better team. And one of the main reasons is because they get Alabama in College Station. I think that could be a game where it decides who goes. Florida, just not super confident. I think the gap between Georgia and Florida is actually larger than between Bama and Texas A&M this year. So between those two things, it's really close. You could go either way here. But I just trust Texas A&M a little bit more right now than Florida, even though I do like Florida this year.
My logic is very, very similar to Michael. I think the Aggies are better, but given that they're in that tougher West Division, you didn't even mention like a team like Arkansas is very good. I just see a slightly easier path for the Gators, even though they don't have the easiest slate. Because one thing is Georgia, if that offense doesn't live up to the expectations and take that next step, it's up for the taking. Like Florida could pick them off and steal that division, and so that's why I leaned with Florida.
All right. Thanks for checking out this episode of the College Football Bros. Be sure to subscribe if you like college football. We cover the sport all year round, and we're of course in the middle of our 50+ questions to preview this upcoming season. So appreciate you checking out the show. And we'll be back tomorrow ranking the 10 best SEC games of 2021. We'll talk to you then.
You've been watching the College Football Bros. Be sure to subscribe here on YouTube and in your podcast app for college football content all year round. For bonus episodes and access to our Discord chat, join our Patreon at patreon.com/collegefootballbros. Thanks for watching.